Welcome into The Rundown. This is a podcast where we at CBN News bring you inside information about the stories we're working on. Today's Tuesday, April 6th, and I'm Talia Wise, filling in for Caitlin Burke. April 19th could be the day that every adult in the U.S. becomes eligible to receive a COVID vaccination. That's about 2 weeks earlier than President Biden's original May 1st deadline. He is set to announce this news this afternoon. That's the good news, as close to 3 million people are getting vaccinated each day. More than 18% of the population is now fully vaccinated, and the death rate is slowly going down. But there's some bad news. Infections are up about 7% this past week, and hospitalizations are increasing by 3%. CBN's senior medical reporter, Lorie joins me now to talk more about these developments. Lorie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first off, death rates are down, but hospitalizations are up. Does this mean our healthcare system is getting a handle on helping people fight this virus?
Well, yes and no. It's definitely a good news, bad news situation. And yesterday, the White House COVID response team had a great quote, and they said, let's not confuse progress for victory. I loved it. Let's not confuse progress for victory. And what we're seeing now is incredible progress as far as vaccinations and reducing deaths from where we were in January. But also there is still an increase, a very troubling increase in about half of the states, and increases even in hospitalizations. So we know that so many people over the age of 65, our senior citizens, have gotten vaccinated. And that is largely why we're seeing fewer deaths, because we saw that most of the deaths were in people over 65. And it looks like right now about 75% of senior citizens have gotten at least one of their vaccines. And so much of that population that was most at risk is protected. But the second highest risk factor besides age is obesity. And so many people who have not been vaccinated yet are struggling with obesity and have other risk factors. And so these unvaccinated people are the ones we're seeing that are really spreading the virus right now. And that's compounded by the fact that this more contagious variant, the B117 variant, that we used to call it the UK variant, is now the dominant strain. The virus is so much more easily spread these days, and still so many people aren't vaccinated. And so that's what we're dealing with here. People who feel like, yay, the pandemic's over, let's go out and party. If a person is unvaccinated, they still need to take precautions.
Right, that's good advice. Experts are now saying that children are spreading that variant, the B117. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it is a problem. And so we're seeing, especially at yesterday, the CDC said they're seeing especially that the young people spreading this at sporting events and group settings. And so once again, the caution is wear a mask and social distance until you can get vaccinated. The good news is we know that people between the ages of 15 and 18 are now cleared for the vaccine. So pretty soon, people as young as 15 will be able to get vaccinated. And studies for people younger than 15 are ongoing, and we should have the results of those by the beginning of the year. So still young people, particularly teenagers, need to take precautions. I don't know how many people saw the images of young people on spring break down in Miami, and situations like that where there are large crowds can be really problematic, not just for teenagers and youngsters, but for young adults. We're seeing the spike in cases in young adults under the age of 30.
I know that, one thing is people are afraid of another set of lockdowns with children and young people spreading this variant. And I read that, each state there now is a variant, some type of variant in each state. Could this possibly be that we would enter into another wave?
Right. And so it's really that's a fantastic question. And it's literally a race against time because we've seen in Europe, for example, they definitely are into their fourth surge and they definitely have more lockdowns. But what Europe is not doing that we are is just vaccinating people like crazy. Believe it or not, Saturday, the United States vaccinated more than 4 million people in one day. That's incredible. So our daily vaccination rate is above 3 million a day. So the more people who get vaccinated faster, that cuts down on the ability of the virus to spread. So that's, we've got this rampant spread of the virus, but we've also got this incredibly fast, effective vaccination program going on. And so the more people can get vaccinated, the more this will prevent us from having to have any lockdowns or experiencing a fourth surge.
Right. So focusing more on the vaccine, once you get the shot, how long does the vaccine last?
Well, health experts say right now we know that it lasts at least 6 months. That's all the data we have right now. So it's very likely that we will find out that it lasts longer than 6 months, but we know at the very minimum it's 6 months. And that's simply because we haven't had the data to observe people who have been vaccinated longer than 6 months. And so we see that with different vaccines have different longevities. Some vaccines, like measles, is for a lifetime. Chickenpox, same thing, it's for a lifetime. Other vaccines, like the flu vaccine, that typically only lasts about 6 months. And that's why we get a flu vaccine each year. It remains to be seen how long the COVID-19 vaccine lasts in our system.
I want to move to an article that the New York Times put out. They report that white evangelicals are hesitant to receive the vaccine because of their faith and a mistrust of science. But you recently spoke with Dr. Francis Collins. He's the director of the National Institutes of Health. What did he have to say about vaccine hesitancy in the faith community?
Well, Dr. Francis Collins is actually a born-again Christian, and he's actually a leader in the Christian world, and he's written a book called The Language of God. He's actually one of the most renowned scientists in the world. He was actually responsible for mapping the human genome, for figuring out DNA. And so he's that perfect blend of scientist, doctor, born again Christian, and a politician. He is the director of the National Institutes of Health. He was responsible for developing some of these vaccines. So he sees this as a gift from God, these vaccines as a way that God has worked through his people to bless his people. And he's not the only one. Franklin Graham said, not only are vaccines blessing and a gift from God, but that his father, Billy Graham, was very pro-vaccine. And Franklin Graham said that if his father were alive today, he would get a vaccine, and even went so far as to say that if vaccines were around in the time of Jesus, that Jesus himself would advocate vaccines. We see a lot of other Christian leaders getting vaccinated and advocating vaccines, including Pat Robertson. He got a vaccine. Gordon Robertson, Robert Jeffress, Beth Moore, T.D. Jakes, and others. And so a lot of the leaders in the Christian community are trying to set an example and saying that vaccines are a gift from God and it's a way to love your neighbor. Some people say, well, I don't really care if I get the COVID-19 virus. I'm strong, I'm healthy, I'll probably be fine. But what about your neighbor? You might transmit it to somebody who's not as strong and healthy as you. And so it's a way to love our neighbor.
That's a great point. We've seen the CDC give out some confusing information about what those who are vaccinated can do and what they cannot do. So what's the latest?
All right, that's great. So the latest is when you're fully vaccinated, you yourself are protected. The question is, can you pass it along to someone else who is not protected? So when you're fully vaccinated, that means it has been 2 weeks since your last shot. So for Pfizer and Moderna, those are 2 shots, or for Johnson & Johnson, that's just 1 shot. So you wait until 2 weeks after, and that's when you're fully vaccinated. Your immune system has made as many antibodies as it's going to make. And the CDC said now You are free to travel. You are going to be protected. The sticking point is, can you pass it along to other people? Because there is some question as to whether the virus can get in your nose and get in your throat, and you can sneeze it on other people, cough it onto other people, or sometimes if you speak, you can get it onto other people. The CDC director said new evidence shows that you cannot transmit the virus if you've been vaccinated. But other scientists like Dr. Anthony Fauci and even someone else in the CDC said, hold on for a second. We need more research to prove that you cannot actually pass it along. So there is a study going on right now that will definitively tell us that whether you can pass along the coronavirus if you've been vaccinated. And the results of that study will come out in about 4.5 months. So right now, it's kind of iffy whether you can pass it along. They say if you want to be extra cautious, go ahead and wear a mask if you've been fully vaccinated.
Wow, looking forward to seeing that study. Lorie, I want to thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks, Talia, for having me. God bless you.
To keep up with the latest health news, be sure to watch Healthy Living. You can catch it tonight on the CBN News Channel at 8:30 Eastern.
Your voice and values deserve a place in the media. Help us continue to deliver the independent Christian journalism the world needs. Visit cbnnews.com/give now and give your values a voice.
Here are some other headlines we are following today. Israeli President Rivlin is naming Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to form the next government. Rivlin had met with party leaders Monday, and in a speech today, he said he had made his choice based on the recommendations he had received. Rivlin said those recommendations indicated Netanyahu would have had the slightly higher chance of forming a government. Ironically, Netanyahu's court hearing on corruption charges resumed Monday. The law allows a prime minister to continue serving even if he's facing charges. Rivlin said he doesn't have much hope Netanyahu will succeed in forming a government, leading to the possibility of a fifth election. And the Baylor Bears are celebrating their NCAA college basketball championship. The Christian school beating previously undefeated Gonzaga last night, 86-70. The Bears' Jared Butler named the Final Four Most Outstanding Player. He gave thanks to the Lord after the game, saying, Jesus Christ, He's the truth. He was with us tonight. He's with us all season. He brought the team together. The Baylor program was in bad shape when Coach Scott Drew took over in 2003. He built it back up using a culture called JOY, which stands for Jesus, Others, Yourself. Well, that's all for now. If you're enjoying the CBN News Daily Rundown, be sure to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Caitlin Burke will be back tomorrow with more of the top stories and the behind-the-scenes insight into how we're covering them.